Today on our show, we've got whips.
And we got thwips. Pew, pew,
Yeah,
pew, pew.
that's right, man. We're talking Castlevania, and we're talking Spider-Man Homecoming. Two IPs that have just come out in the last week that are so good, we have to give them oral. That's happening to you next on the Nerdynomicon. Welcome to the Nerdynomicon. I'm Robbie.
And I'm Adrian.
Yeah, I started to question my little intro right there as far as, so good that we had to give them oral. Obviously, we're podcasters. We're in an auditory medium. We're oral here. But that did have to do with high school and Spider-Man Homecoming, so maybe just like a sad hand job.
An over-the-pants hand job.
Yeah, some over-the-clothes stuff. That's what we're going to do here.
I was worried you were going to make me, deep throat this microphone.
Well, they were that good. Full disclosure, they were that good. But we'll get our reviews of the two of them. How was your week this week, sir?
It was pretty goddamn amazing. And
that's awesome, man.
I know. I mean, and I think we should make it known. I'm usually behind the times with stuff. So these IPs were so good. I watched them when they came out.
And you're right. Usually I have to force you. I'm like, this has just come out. We're talking about this on the show. And you're like, but it's 13 hours of a girl with a cassette recorder. I'm like, do it, Adrian.
See, that one, at least it was on Netflix, and we've already paid for Netflix, so it's
right.
I if I could find the time, which was difficult, but I did it, that one I don't have as much of a stance against. But if it's something that's it's in theaters, something that could cost you $40 for one ticket to see it on opening weekend when it's crowded as fuck, and I'm that sounds awful, and I don't typically have the time. I have time around the house in between things happening and kids going to bed and animals being animals. I can find some time to watch TV and veg out, especially at the end of the day. Right before we go to bed, we can watch stuff on Hulu or Netflix or whatever. But getting out to the theater is difficult because I'm not going to go without her, and she's not going to go unless somebody's watching the kids.
That's completely understandable.
Yeah. So
I just feel really bad for you in a couple of weeks when I force you to go see the new Planet of the Apes movie. That's not happening. I'm just going to tell you right now, that's not happening. I'm fucking with you, dude. I'm just fucking with you.
And it's not because I have anything against Planet of the Apes. I just haven't followed the last 3 or 4 movies that they released. So I don't know what the fuck's going on. And I'm saving...
Sadly, they're some of the best, actually.
I'm saving my, going out to the movies credits for Dark Tower.
Oh, hells yes. Oh, you best believe we're talking about that. Honestly, we might even release an early episode. We might be that excited just to throw our voices out there into the void.
Yeah.
I cannot wait for that episode. We might even just podcast that night. Yeah. It's but it's 1:00 in the morning. Yeah, well, I'm behind you in the times. It's a time paradox with the time zones that we got going on here. So it's later for me. I'll kill you, Adrian.
So, yeah. My week, fucking amazing.
Awesome.
Got to see, we went and saw Wonder Woman, which I think we're going to talk about in a later episode. And then we snuck into Spider-Man Homecoming. So 2 for the price of 1, which was a lot of fun.
You're such a bad boy. You're such a rebel.
I don't know if you know this. Early afternoon movie theaters on a Monday, not much security. It was not that hard to actually sneak into the movie at all. We were
I've never really had an issue.
We were sitting there trying to plan things out like it's fucking Ocean's 11 or the Italian Job. Okay, here's what's gonna happen. The movie's gonna end. Okay, and we're gonna scope out all the theaters. So we're walking back because we're at the end of the wing. There's 2 wings on the theater, and we're gonna look at all the theaters on the way back. I have a feeling it's in the other wing. So what we're gonna have to get to the bathrooms in the middle. Don't go to the bathrooms in the wing. Go to the bathrooms in the middle because you can cut across to the other wing from there. And we'll just have to look look like we are supposed to be there, and don't let anyone like see your face. And, like, so we're walking back from the wing, and like it's on the same side. It's right by the middle bathrooms, and no one is there. No one gives a fuck. It's like, wow. I almost wish there were people that we were trying to like sneak around. Like, this is anticlimactic.
You're planning this out like you're Danny Ocean, and I can guarantee you these guys are just like, I don't care. Just don't record it. Seriously.
Give me like a nudie mag or a cardboard box to distract people with or something, man. I'm trying to like solid snake this up, and there is nobody. It was like I was dropped in the wrong fucking war zone.
And if you were me, you had sound effects queued up on your phone for if a security guard sees you and they're like, hey, what movie theater are you supposed to be in? Dring, snake! Dun, 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 dun.
And that's when they just shake their head and walk away. You're like, I don't know what's up with this motherfucker.
Exactly. That's exactly right. They're like, I don't get paid enough for this. Hashtag fight for 15.
So that was pretty awesome. And then to close out the awesomeness of my week, I actually texted you about this. I fulfilled one of my lifelong dreams of doing a backflip, and I did it on a trampoline. So I'm not ground certified. Don't, hold your breath for that one. I don't know if that one will ever happen. I'm getting up there in age. I'm no longer a spry, young 20-something-year-old. But finally did a backflip. It was amazing. And Tavia, she was watching me, like, attempt it, but she couldn't watch me. She was like, I don't want to watch you hurt yourself if you mess up. So she was in the kitchen not like, paying attention, and she heard me, like, scream. And she was like, okay, he either killed himself or he landed it. And she, like, looked, and I'm, like, grinning and pumping my fist in the air like I fucking won the trampoline championships at the Olympics or something.
Like you were the Jamaican bobsled team
right.
who got across the finish line.
Yeah.
John Candy's there, and you're like, John Candy, that's weird.
So, but yeah, that was great. That was a lot of fun.
Well, that one's off your bucket list. Good for you.
I don't know what else is. I feel like there's a lot of things on my bucket list that I forgot I put on there, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I kind of had a dream about doing that one day. Maybe
Dressing
I'll remember
Boba Fett's
sometime.
Armor?
No.
That one's on mine.
I don't know. Boba Fett's all right, but I feel like I want a real lightsaber. Even though I would immediately,
I want a real lightsaber
immediately
too.
cut off a limb somewhere somehow immediately. I would like get the lightsaber, turn it on, and somehow my arm is no longer attached to me. But I want one.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you exactly what I would do. I would use that to carve up the prime rib that we make on Christmas dinner, and I like mine rare, not cold. Dude, I wouldn't even have to cook that thing. I'd just stuff it all full of seasoning and everything like that. Just kind of crisp up the outside before I use it. And just turn on Old Blue. Shh. There it is. There it is. Delicious. Probably somewhat nuclear, but you know what? That could turn me into a superhero. So it's all good. Everything good happens for me at that point.
Jedi Spider-Man.
Fucking A right, dude. But I don't know. I've always wanted to dress up in Mandalorian battle armor and then have sex with my wife while she's wearing the chick version of the Mandalorian battle armor from Star Wars Rebels.
Not like the slave Twi'lek kind of look?
Oh, no, that's
Dancing
working
girl?
for me, too. But there's something about that chick Mandalorian armor. I'm just like, hashtag yes. Fucking yes, man.
Or
I don't know. I realize it's a weird thing. I realize this.
This is going to be a low blow, but you know what you could do? You could dress up in the Boba Fett armor, right? And you could have her in the slave Leia outfit, and then just get Dickie to be Jabba the Hutt there, and have her chained up. I don't know if he's big or not. Begrudgingly. He would begrudgingly do it.
Like, dude, can you be a part of my sex life? He's like, yeah. How naked do I have to get?
All the way. Loincloth. Wait, did Jabba didn't even have a loincloth, did he?
No, dude, he was just a big fucking slug.
And who was...
That's just it. Dickie is not a big fucking slug. He's not a big guy.
And maybe Dickie can be that little, like, furry, laughing puppet
Salacious
creeper
crumb.
Get them all involved.
Oh, God. My sex life just turned really, really weird. And it was already weird with the Mandalorian battle armor.
You can invite in...
That just got weird.
Invite in B. Arthur and Abraham Lincoln. So, anyways, what I'm trying to say is my week was great. How was your week, Robbie?
My week was good. Saw a bunch of great shows, saw a couple great movies. Been able to get a lot of good work done. My week was good, man. It was very good. You ready for some news?
I think we've BS'd long enough on how our weeks were.
I'm sorry, I can't top the Mandalorian battle armor. So you're like, how was your week been? Nothing epic, and the awesome stuff we're going to be talking about later in the show anyway. So I'll just dive right into it. I can't top the backflip, Adrian.
I know. I've actually been any chance I get, I've been running back out to the trampoline to do more. It's just like an adrenaline. It's my new crack.
And the thing is, I can understand that too, because you have sex in Mandalorian battle armor once, you got to do it a couple of times. You got to get your money's worth, because that shit don't come cheap.
But I do.
Fair enough. Touche. All right, on with the news. Are you ready for this? All right, so we got some comic book news. Jughead the Hunger from Archie Comics. As a matter of fact, a spinoff of Archie Horror Comics. Turns out Archie Horror is, in fact, not dead. This was a one-shot that came out in March, which depicted Jughead Jones as a werewolf and Betty Cooper as a werewolf fucking hunter, man. Well, Archie Horror has made us a promise. If we all help to make that one-shot a success, they would make us very happy. And they didn't mean dressing up in Mandalorian battle armor and banging all of us in succession. No, sir. They meant that they were going to turn this into a series, which we are going to get starting in October. That is my happy point of this. The downside is I'll believe it when I see it, because there's still no confirmation if and when Afterlife with Archie is ever going to return, let alone Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. So we've got two amazing series that are winning awards. Everybody that's reading them loves them. They're still kind of in limbo, and now they're launching a third title. I want it. Don't get me wrong. I want it so bad I can taste the sweaty werewolf balls. But I kind of want the other two series to come back too. So I'm optimistic. I think that we are going to get one in October. I'm not sure how long this is going to run. That is my only apprehension. People are like, Robbie, you're supposed to be the happy one. You're supposed to be the positive one. I am positive that this is going to be a fucking phenomenal book. I'm not positive, given their 4-year track record of Archie Horror, that it's going to continue past 3 or 4 issues. That is my only apprehension. So, yeah, that's pretty much it.
I got nothing. I don't follow any of that. So, but I want you to be happy. Unfortunately, because you, excuse me. Unfortunately, because you love it, it's going to get canceled.
The Curse of the Palmer tends not to translate over to comic books. It's usually just television shows. Occasionally movies, but for the most part, it's just TV shows. I hope you're wrong, because I'm going to cry so hard.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you should be. But that's all the news that we're going to be giving you guys today, because we've got 2 major pieces of IP that we need to get to, man. What do you think? Castlevania first?
Castlevania first.
All right. Full disclosure, there are going to be spoilers throughout this episode. We're starting out with Castlevania. 4-part series on Netflix. We're going to be discussing this. There is probably going to be some minor spoilers, but if you're a fan of the Castlevania series, there's really not going to be that much there that you're going to be upset about. Spider-Man's the big one, so we're saving Spider-Man for last, and we'll let you know when the spoilers are going to begin. So let's dive into Castlevania. Adrian, this is, I think you said one time definitively that this is your number 1 favorite video game intellectual property.
I think it's up there. It's hard for me to put it as at 1 by itself, because there's just so many good, not genres, but there's so many good series of games that
there are. Yeah.
But if I look at like the amount of time I've spent playing Castlevania over the years, I would have to say it's probably number 1. Like just through time spent on it, it's more than likely number 1.
So this is my question to you as a lifelong diehard Castlevania fan. What did you think?
I loved it. I totally loved it. I thought it was amazing.
Right?
Yeah, it was,
right?
It was so good. It was very unexpected. Like, I should have expected some of this stuff, but it wasn't. I just had no idea what I was going to get going into it with Castlevania. Because you're like, are they going to do it right? How are they going to do it? A lot of people thought it was going to be live action, but it's not. It's animated. And you're like, if it's going to be animated, is it going to be toned down? And it was not. There was cursing and gore and stuff. There was stuff that I was not expecting from gore. They were like killing children, which is not.
Dude, it was like halfway between Ninja Scroll and Spawn the Animated Series, as far as the animation style, the gore, and the cursing.
Yeah.
It was not your child's Castlevania series. Okay? No. This was not your grandparents' Castlevania series. This may or may not put Grandpappy in the hospital with a heart attack. No, this was very much ours. This was made for you and me.
I was trying to come up with a joke based on This Land Is Your Land, but I just can't. I loved it. I really, really did. I won't say it was completely without fault. I think there were a few times the voice acting or the dialogue sounded awkward, but it was very, very rare, and it was just like a line here or there. Overall, It was really, really good. I thought the animation was good. The fight scenes were great. It was very, very interesting. They were using the people's skills very well, so it wasn't just the whips. He was also using the daggers, and they had
the whip dagger.
Yeah, they had like, I think, is it Sifa? I think that's how you pronounce it. She was using her magic from, it's just like, it was, and it was put together really well, and it's like, okay, we're trying to do this 2D, because this is based off of Castlevania 3.
Castlevania 3. Yes.
So we're trying to take
The Curse of Dracula. I honestly thought at the beginning that we were going to be getting this in release order. I was really expecting Simon Belmont. So when I found out that it was going to be following Trevor Belmont, which is, if memory serves, canonically the very first game of the series, right?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I think I believe Trevor is supposed to be the father of Simon.
Father or grandfather, one or the other, yeah. So it follows Trevor. Now, here's the thing. When I started watching this series, there's only 4 episodes. You don't see a Belmont until the last 30 seconds of the first episode. So I'm spending the entire first episode actually sitting there almost rooting for Dracula. Because they turn Dracula into a very sympathetic, very human-filled inhuman. You know what I mean? You understand the reason for his wrath. You understand the reason for his vengeance. You get why he's calling forth his army of darkness. But I'm sitting here wondering how a Belmont is going to fall into this. Because I'm on the side of Dracula so much in this story, because it has to do with a lot of the kind of like the Inquisition mindset of burning witches at the stake. And spoiler alert, they burned Dracula's wife at the stake. And this sends him into a rage because she was his tether to humanity. Yep. She was the anchor in this world that let him realize that, hey, not all humans are stupid and bad. And then when stupid, bad humans, that of course they gotta be Catholic, burn her alive as a witch, it sends him into a frenzy. You know, like, see, I knew it. I knew that this was going to happen, but he's not without mercy. He gives the people of Wallachia, was that the name of the country?
I believe
Wallachia?
so.
He gives them a year to put their affairs in order, make their peace with God, and or get the flying fuck out of Dodge, because he's taken over the country. He tells them, he warns them, he gives them a year. Then they start celebrating. They're like, oh yeah, it's been a year. He ain't doing shit. And as soon as that happens, man, blood starts raining from the sky, and the demons, they coming. And you're not seeing hide nor hair of the Belmont. And then finally, you do. And, oh my God. Trevor Belmont, he had the perfect mixture of fuck yes and humor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was a badass, but he was a badass with snark. He was a badass with a smile. It was great to see. I loved his characterization. He played the way he played in my mind when I played Castlevania 3 for the very first time. He played like the character that I had written in my mind. He played as my favorite Belmont in all of the Castlevania series. And I couldn't have been more thrilled. So, technically speaking, as far as what the series has going for it. They did so many things technically right. A good example is the attire for Trevor Belmont. If you look at the sprites from the video game and you look at him, they nailed him. If you look at Sifa and you take a look at the aura that she emits and her clothing, her clothing, she's wearing blue robes. You look at her character sprite from the games, she's a character dressed all in blue. Alucard as well. He's looking exactly like he should. Their fighting styles, like you brought up, the magic from Sifa, the whip and the knife whip from Trevor, even Alucard's fighting style when he's introduced as a character, really introduced as a character in the series, it's so reminiscent of Symphony of Darkness that it almost brought a tear to my eye. You could tell that this was a labor of love from the creators of this series. I could not have been more thrilled.
Yeah, I was blown away by the attention to details, and I was just left wanting more. It seemed like they were. It was almost just like this is like the prologue, It's like they're just getting.
Oh, that's exactly how it translated too. This was the prologue? This was a 2-hour prologue to the game, 2-hour prologue to the movie, which is still like a quarter less than Kojima in Metal Gear 4.
So, it's I want more. I know it's already renewed. They're going to have a second season, if you want to call this one a season. It's supposed to be 8 episodes. Really, they haven't even made it to the castle yet. They say the castle can be anywhere, which is an interesting way of approaching it, because a lot of the stuff that they were going through when they were finding Alucard was like the clock tower. It was like that classic clock tower scene with all the giant gears and pendulums and, So I didn't see a lot of other classic Castlevania levels. Maybe I wasn't paying as much attention to the backgrounds, but all in all, I thought the art was phenomenal.
Oh my God, it wasn't it though? We got a stone-eyed Cyclops.
It was amazing. And you know what? Back to attention to detail on that. I loved at the end of that fight where, the only way to be unfrozen is if you've been frozen by the Cyclops is if the Cyclops dies. So it unfreezes her, and you're kind of looking around at all the other people that were killed by the Cyclops, and they're still frozen. And as they're walking away, like these bodies that are chopped but frozen, they start thawing out, and blood's. It's like, wow, that's cool. I'm glad they didn't forget about that.
Yep.
If you're gonna present a rule, you better follow it, and they did.
Oh, there's just so much good in these 4 hours, especially for an animated series, which I really did expect a live action. I know that it was announced that it was going to be an animated series very early on, but I must have missed that little bit of news because I really was expecting live action. So I was a bit disappointed. That disappointment went right out the window when I saw the finished product that we had. My only real disappointment was that there was so little of it.
Yep.
But it was enough to whet my appetite. I'm going to be really pissed off if I have to wait another year for these 8 episodes, despite the fact that I know that animated series are very time-consuming to create, and they're incredibly expensive to produce.
Yep.
So Netflix is throwing dollars down there. They're just sitting there, all right, here's a 5, here's a 10, hundreds. Making it rain over here on Castlevania. Making it rain the blood of all these Benjamins. They're giving it to us, man. They renewed it the weekend it came out. I believe the day it came out, if not the following day.
I don't know what they were expecting for the interest or ratings or whatever, but I think they absolutely knocked it out of the park. I do want to correct you on one thing, because you said it's 4 hours, and it's only 2. I think each episode is roughly a half hour. So
thank you for the correction. There were 4 episodes. 2 hours. Yeah, they were half hour per episode. Thank you very much for the correction.
So if you think you don't have time to watch this, you do. Yeah, you do.
You do.
And it's interesting. Tavia actually really enjoyed it too. She knows nothing about Castlevania, and I was told her, it's like, I'm really excited about this. I'd like to watch it. I'd really like to watch it tonight, the night that it was released. And she was like, yeah, this is interesting. They did a good job. He's like, I'm really interested in what's happening, especially, the whole Dracula backstory. And then you're following Trevor and what he's doing and why he's doing it. And he's kind of sarcastic and kind of a dick, and you're trying to figure out why. And eventually he tells you, and all of that stuff kind of coming together, and then the final introduction of Alucard, and they're still missing. I think if they're getting the whole band together,
Alucard like a motherfucker.
They're still missing
Man,
Grant,
so
right?
Yes, they are.
So
yeah, they are.
mean, there's still lots to come from this story, assuming they're going to bring everyone in. It'd be interesting to see how they do that, because there's a very loose framework of story in the games. It's you're going to kill Dracula, and that's pretty much it. Like, there's kind of reasons behind it, and most of the time it's like, well, you're a Belmont, and Belmont's killed Dracula, and so that's your job. And then it's like, okay, go through mission, like go through levels and go kill the bosses, and then go kill Dracula. That's pretty much it. So it was interesting to see what they've done.
It is
with
and
all that open-endedness, how they've taken it and made it their own.
And it's going to be interesting to see where they go from here, too, because especially, and this should be noted, the writer for this series is none other than Warren Ellis, acclaimed comic book writer, fantastic animated series writer, and also damn good video game writer. Homeboy wrote the original Dead Space. So Warren Ellis is at the helm here. No wonder the writing was so fantastic. But it's going to be really interesting to see where they go from here, too. Because especially starting with Castlevania 3, you started to see a lot of interesting mixes of monsters in these games. You know what I mean? Not just things like the stone-eyed Cyclops, but there's characters in there ranging from the real-life Vlad Tepes, a.k.a. Dracula, to Elizabeth Bathory. There's a character in this Castlevania series based on her. There's characters based on Frankenstein's monster. Mm-hmm. There's characters based on Japanese folklore. It's going to be so interesting to see what they do, what they decide to bring in. I'm not really sure if there's anything that they could bring in or omit in a series like this that would make me necessarily disappointed. I think, to me, it's going to be all about the presentation of the story. If you can give me a reason for an Elizabeth Bathory-esque character to be in there, I'm there with you.
Bring it on.
I'm there, man. If you need to shoehorn it in, it doesn't fucking need to be there. What are you doing? What are you thinking? What are you doing, Warren? But I don't see him doing that. I mean, I really like his writing. I like his work. He's got a damn good body of work. I think that this series is in very good hands.
I totally agree. I think there's two things that I'd really like to see. It won't kill the series for me if I don't see them, but I'll kind of be like, oh. One, I want to see some fucking Medusa heads flying through there. Like that's an iconic. It's not even a boss. It's just like an iconic monster.
It's just something that happens to you.
Yeah, you just fucking a sine wave fucking Medusa head comes in and fucks your shit up every Castlevania. That's just what they do, and they're so obnoxious and annoying, but they have to be in there. They have to.
It's almost like you get rickrolled in every Castlevania game. It's just like I don't know when it's happening. Okay, well, I guess they're going to leave it out. Son of a bitch.
And then usually,
God damn it.
Usually it's in a level where you have to climb to the top of something and they fucking knock you all the way down to the bottom, or they knock you off the screen and you fucking die.
Isn't it, though?
Yeah,
Isn't that the way it happens?
That's how they do it. And then
I agree.
The other thing is I would really love to hear some of the Castlevania music. Because that's part of what made the game so iconic. If it's not in there and the music is still good, I could get over it. But God, I would love to hear me some Castlevania remixes.
Now, if memory serves, didn't they have some... this was pointed out in an article that I was briefly skimming right before we recorded. Didn't they have some music that was roughly inspired by some of the background music in Castlevania in there? Or did you not pick any of that out? Nothing directly like in your face. Like nothing like the iconic music of Silent Hill just being thrown in or anything like that, but just like rough inspiration in the background music?
I didn't pick up on anything, but we were listening kind of low since it was late at night and the kids were asleep. So It's very possible that I missed it. But I want that in your face. I want, assuming it fits, I want fucking screaming electric guitar playing Vampire Killer or Bloody Tears or something, I want that in the middle of a fight scene so I can just be like, yes, motherfucker, yes.
No, I hear you. I mean, I felt the exact same way when I was watching the cinematic version of Silent Hill. I didn't necessarily want Akira's version of the theme of Laura to end out the movie, but I got it, and I was like, fuck yes, it's happening to me. It makes no sense in this movie, but it's here. And I walked out of there with a smile on my face. Because up to this point, I really think that the Silent Hill movie was the best video game adaptation that we've had. It was far superior to Assassin's Creed. Far superior to any of the Hitman games. Far superior. Superior to Mario Brothers.
Oh, no, I'm going to have to disagree with you there. Next thing you're going to be telling me it was far superior.
I'm speechless here.
You're going to tell me it was far superior to Double Dragon and Street Fighter 2. And it's just... I'm totally just lying. I'm being a dick. Don't listen to me.
Oh, God.
Some of the worst movies that Holly loves, I'm sure.
I'm sure she does. But no, those movies were god-awful. They were just abortions of film that never should have been made ever. One movie that I will say that was actually pretty damn good as far as a video game to film translation was the original Mortal Kombat.
Yes.
I thought that they did a pretty good job with that. I think that the second one was an abortion, but the first one was not that bad.
Yeah, I actually really liked the first one. I know it's not the greatest movie of all time.
No. And
But
I'm not saying that it's going to stand the test of time and it's a great film. But
I mean,
it wasn't bad.
No, and to be fair, we are comparing it to other video game property movies, and most of the video game properties suck in movie form. So it's got that going for it. It's better than most video game movies.
Yeah, but here's the thing: it shouldn't. That's the problem. Is they shouldn't.
Yeah,
Silent Hill shouldn't suck in film. Mario Brothers, I get how it does, but it shouldn't. Assassin's Creed, there is no excuse for sucking as bad as it did. Visually, that movie was spectacular. Story-wise, acting-wise, everything else-wise, they put everything into really clean, really good-looking visuals, but that's it. You know what I mean?
I think
they had everything good from Doctor Strange, but none of the stuff that made Doctor Strange a good movie. And I'm not saying that, the warping of reality or anything like that. I'm saying that visually Doctor Strange was a fantastic film, but it also had all of the other nuggets that made a good movie a good movie. It had fantastic acting. It had a solid plot. It had relatable characters. It had a well-executed script. Assassin's Creed didn't have any of that. As a matter of fact, Warcraft had better versions of all of that, with the exception of the CG. So... But then again, that is just my opinion.
But that's what we're here to give.
Absolutely. So I stand by it. I stand by my previous statement. The Silent Hill version, even though I'm not a terribly huge fan of it, and I think that it's pandered way too much to fans, and it included a lot of shit that didn't make sense at all, like the inclusion of Pyramid Head. I think that the film version of Silent Hill was probably the best video game movie that we've ever had. This, even though it's not a movie, it's technically a first season of a series. This plays like a 2-hour prologue to a TV series. So I'm going to lump it in there, and I would say that this is the best that we've had so far. I think that they've nailed it.
Yep, I would 100% agree.
I think they nailed how well they married the iconic visuals from the video game, a well-executed script, well-done action, a compelling story, a compelling plot, compelling protagonist, compelling antagonist, an antagonist that you could really get behind, but at the same time have a desire to annihilate. You can clearly see that he's gone way too far, but you understand his mindset.
Yep.
Not to mention the aloofness of Alucard just drove me over the edge as far as fanboy. I started screaming like my nipples were being electrocuted. It was just amazing. So, yeah, Castlevania. All right, rating. How are we going to rate this show?
Why don't you pick your rating first? Because I'll come up with something else as well. Because I'm all about Castlevania, so I'm not going to steal whatever you're thinking of. So.
All right. On a scale from 1 to 10 whiplashes, because we got to whip it good. We got to whip it into shape. Out of 1 to 10 whiplashes, I'm going to give this one a 5. 5 whiplashes. It loses 5 points because it was missing the one thing that I needed to make this series one of the best things that I've seen this year. Wall chicken.
There's still time. They didn't even get in the castle yet.
I know, but I wanted me some wall chicken. You gave me 2 hours of Castlevania and not a single wall chicken. Not one. Not even one time, Adrian Steve.
They didn't even have time to look for it. They were looking for each other first. They're getting the band together, all right?
Look, Adrian, I'm not looking for excuses. I'm looking for solutions. And the solution is to give me some wall chicken. They did not do that. They only get a 5.
A 5 out of 10. That is the most brutal score I've heard. You have to give a real
I'm
rating.
joking.
You better give a real rating.
My real rating, simply because there was a couple of mix-ups. The kicking Trevor in the testicles scene went on a bit long, in my opinion. I'm only nitpicking here. And if I'm being completely honest, nitpicking aside, I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. The only reason I'm not giving this a perfect score is because it was so short. I feel like you could have given us one more episode to give us a perfect prelude and a perfect setup to go into this castle. It felt a little bit rushed in the final episode to put the pieces together and to start things out. And it just felt way too series finale of Sopranos with a cut to black. So I'm going to knock off a half a point for that fact alone. I feel like Luke Cage went on 8 episodes too long. Or 5 episodes too long. I feel like this one was 1 episode too quick or too low. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm going to knock a half a point off for that one. I feel like they rushed and expedited all of that exposition in there. The other nitpicks, to me, they're valid, but they're not enough to really take any real points off of. That's just a matter of personal preference.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Danny Rand has shoes on. He doesn't have shoes on. It's your preference. Sometimes you got a foot fetish. Sometimes you don't like barefooted people. It's preference. So, but that's gonna be my score right there.
Okay.
9.5 out of 10 whiplashes.
Okay. I totally agree with you on the last episode. It felt a little rushed. Mostly just the end. I felt like they were just trying to okay,
yes.
People want to see Alucards. We got to get them in here. But it felt really late in the episode, and they were just like, okay, we got to have them fight. Oh, okay, and then we got to resolve it, and we're running out of time. Okay, it's over.
Yeah.
But up until that point, I felt like it was pretty well paced.
It felt like a boyfriend that's trying to hurry up and finish before the dad walks into the room. That's what it felt like. It's like, oh, we've been doing a whole lot of teasing, a whole lot of head play, just the tip, swivel hip. Oh, God, your dad's coming. I gotta finish. That's what it felt like to me. Weird metaphor granted, but it doesn't mean that I'm wrong.
Very weird metaphor. But
Touche.
I love your rating. I love the system. I think I'm going to go with 2 holy crosses way, way, way up. I loved it.
Right on. Out of how many?
Out of 2, of course.
Oh, you're giving it a perfect score? Okay, right on, man.
I feel like the 2 holy crosses or thumbs up or whatever you want to call them is a lot looser of a rating system. If I was going to go out of 10, I probably would go 9.5. But 2 out of 2 is closer to 9.5 out of 10 than 1 out of 2 or 1.5 out of 2. So
right,
yeah, I loved it. I think the biggest issue is we want more, but that could also be considered the mark of a very good show. And it's not that it's over; it's just
not by any stretch of the imagination.
On a break. I think it's just a strange naming convention with Netflix. They're calling it a season. I don't think it's actually a season. I feel like this part and whatever comes after it is actually the season. They just kind of broke it up because they weren't sure if people would be into it and if it would do well. So they're like, okay, let's just get this first little bit. This is, fairly standalone, or this is a good stopping point. Let's see what the reaction is. Holy shit, the reaction is good. Okay, no, we're going to finish it out, but we're going to call it season 2 or whatever because we've already released this first part. That's kind of what I
gave us half a nip.
Happened. Yeah.
They give us half a nip. Wanted to make sure that we were into the whole thing.
Little side boob.
Yeah, exactly. A little side boob. Some tasteful cleavage. Now they're going to whip the big dick and just smack it right on the table. All right, so that's our takeaway from Castlevania. If you have not seen it, watch it. We may have been talking about some high points of the series, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't want to know any of this. Be honest. You knew what was coming, and if you didn't, then you had high hopes, and your hopes were fulfilled. This was a phenomenal series. Watch it, watch it, watch it. It's 2 hours out of your life, man. Yep. It's not 13 Reasons Why.
Nope. It's about as dark, but I feel like it has more.
Probably.
I think it has more high points in it, honestly.
I would agree. All right, we got one more thing that we need to review. There was a little movie that came out this weekend, buddy.
Spider-Man.
Thwip, 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 motherfucker. We got webbing all over our face, neck, and chest this weekend, all right? Because we saw Spider-Man. Not together, even though I would love to see Spider-Man with Adrian. He was in a completely different side of the country. But Spider-Man Homecoming dropped, and it blew me away. I've got to be honest, I was excited for this movie, but I wasn't over the top excited for this movie. Because we've had this before. You know, we're not exactly the youngest of guys out there, you know? We've got a lot of listeners that are, believe it or not, in their teens. I got an email from a listener earlier this week that was giving us their ratio for the metric ton as opposed to the royal
Imperial
fucks. They gave me a conversion chart. Turns out we had a listener that was 15 years old and was sending us an email during summer school. So that was awkward, but it was awesome.
I applaud that.
I do too, man. We're trying to make your brain active here. We may say fuck a lot, but we have a relatively high vocabulary. I mean, I use terms like impugn all the time. So, study. Get that vocabulary up. That way you can understand how much more elaborate ways we can curse and make fun of things. That being said, this movie I was excited for it. I was not over the top excited for it. And it blew away and decimated every expectation that I had.
I was cautiously optimistic. I would say this. I know you are all about high school Spider-Man, high school era Peter Parker.
I am. Yes, I am.
If I understand correctly, I don't have anything against it, but at the same time, I don't get the whole huge fascination with it because I feel like in the comic books, and granted, I didn't read all the comic books. I didn't read many of the comic books. I mostly was on the animated series and the Tobey Maguire movies, and those were my Spider-Man. He's not in high school for very long. He's in high school for a couple issues, and he's out. Because, I mean, there's only so much you can do with a high school kid. That being said...
You're right.
That being said, this was a very entertaining movie. It was very, very good. You're almost getting to see... You're getting to see Spider-Man learning how to be Spider-Man, kind of. You know, it's an origin story without the origin, because everybody fucking knows. He got bit by a spider.
That gives it 4 points on whatever scale I choose to come up with on the spot later on. That gives it 4 points automatically in the win column, because we don't need to see the fucking origin story every goddamn time.
Yeah.
Stop with the origin stories. We know how he was created. We know how Batman became Batman. You know, we don't need Martha. You know, yes, I get with great power comes great responsibility, and you don't get to that without the death of Uncle Owen, but we don't need it all the damn time.
Uncle Ben.
This movie, Uncle Owen. Well, Uncle Owen died as well. And that was great responsibility as well. I'm fucking up my intellectual properties here. We shouldn't have talked about cutting up prime rib with a lightsaber earlier. That was your fault, Adrian. They're your words.
Thwip,
your
thwip,
words.
motherfucker. Thwip, thwip.
So, yes, Uncle Ben. We don't need it because we already know it.
Right.
And furthermore, we already had it like 2 years ago with Andrew Garfield. We've had a lot of Spider-Men. You know, I think this is, the 5th incarnation? You know, we've had Tobey Maguire. We've had Andrew Garfield. We had Homeboy that was a little kid in Sound of Music running around there. I think he's a pastor now, actually. But this is like our 5th version of Spider-Man on the screen. And you know what? In my opinion, he was the best. I thought he was fantastic. Oh. I thought he was the best Spider-Man.
I don't know if I can agree with that. I'd say he was very, very good. I think there's still... Okay. I want to see more before I declare him the best. I really liked the first 2 Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. I thought he did a great job as Peter Parker and an okay job as Spider-Man. But for every Spider-Man movie, he's in the suit for maybe 15% of the time, and he's out of the suit for 85%. So you got to be a fucking good Peter Parker, and he was a good Peter Parker. Andrew Garfield, not so good of a Peter Parker. I just didn't believe him. You know,
he was a bit too sexy.
Yeah, he was like riding a skateboard around with spiked up hair, and was like, "Oh, I'm a nerd." It's like, fuck off, man. No, you're not.
He was emo Parker. Yeah,
he was like emo Calvin Klein Parker. I was like, come on. It's like. Mm-hmm. I understand that these movies are now being made for everyone, but comic books and superheroes were initially the refuge of the not popular people.
Right. Yes.
So, like, don't totally take that away from us. Like, we need it. Otherwise, we go crazy, right? And mm-hmm. we yell at people or hurt people or scream at people in traffic. Like give us, like, the beautiful
Go
people.
Go ahead and say it. We need that, otherwise you become Robbie.
No, not necessarily that.
Everything you just said, I've done today.
I've done it too. It's okay.
But, yeah, the downside is I'm usually the optimistic one on the show. So but that's because I scream at people in traffic.
But the beautiful people, they don't need heroes. They already are their heroes. In the real world, they get most everything that they want. I won't say they don't have struggles, but, I mean, if you're less attractive, you're probably going to struggle more. You just don't have that instant charm. You don't have that instant, attraction that people pick up on, that magnetism. Like, if you're beautiful, you can bullshit your way through a lot of life. And if you aren't, you're going to work. You got.
Ironically, I find this very humorous coming from the better looking of us out of the two.
I ain't that good looking, man.
You're pretty good looking, dude.
No, I'm not.
I'm a hideous chud of a man. That's why I'm behind the microphone and Holly's the one doing YouTube.
No.
I'm an awkward looking motherfucker.
No.
But I'm not here to talk about that, man. The reason that I say that he's the best is just like Ben Affleck. You can say what you want about him, but he's probably got the best marriage between Bruce Wayne and Batman. You've had a lot of people that were damn good as Bruce Wayne, but a horrible Batman. I'm looking at you, George Clooney. George Clooney was terrible as Batman. He was awful.
That movie doesn't even count. We forget that movie exists, please.
That movie almost destroyed comic book movies forever.
Exactly.
Okay, Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer was the worst out of both of them.
But that's also nothing after Batman Returns and before Batman Begins actually exists. Batman Ramen didn't happen, and Batman Forever didn't happen. Those didn't happen.
Fair enough.
Guess that's the low-hanging fruit, man. You're picking on, like, the worst of the worst.
Well, they existed.
No.
They're out there.
They have been bleached from my mind. They did not exist. I never will see them again, and I'm pretending I never saw them in the first place.
Fair enough. Although Batman Forever had a good soundtrack.
Yeah, the end of it, yeah, when the credits were done. The best soundtrack I've ever heard.
All right, so how about this? Keaton was an excellent Bruce Wayne. He was a mediocre Batman. Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and Dark Knight Returns. Christian Bale was a great Batman, in my opinion. Very, very mediocre Bruce Wayne. Ben Affleck, costume or not, because I've heard a lot of complaints about that costume, and I get it. I get not a lot of people like the Superman Hunter Batman costume. I think that he was the perfect marriage between the two. I don't think he was an amazing version of either of them, but he was the best marriage between the two that we've ever gotten. This kid, Tom Holland, to me, takes it further, because I thought that he was a great version of Peter Parker, and I thought he was a phenomenal version of Spider-Man. You've got Tobey Maguire that kind of had that old shucksy doodle, kind of Dudley Do-Right looking thing going on as Peter Parker, which, it worked. It was fine. But Tobey Maguire cannot quip. He can't hang with the big boys. He can't hang with the Merc with the mouth. He can't hang with us over here at the Nerdynomicon as far as his banter and as far as his snappiness. Spider-Man has to be able to do that. Spider-Man is a kid from Queens. he has to be able to hang with the big boys vocally when you're Spider-Man. Maguire cannot do that. Andrew Garfield is way too much the other way. I thought he was an excellent Spider-Man. He was a terrible Peter Parker. He had that angsty emo kid thing going on. You know what I mean? And yes, he comes from tragedy. Spider-Man has always come from tragedy, and that's part of makes him who he is. That's part of what makes Spider-Man who Spider-Man is. You know, it's a perfect way to build that origin story, but he just seemed to have too much of that darkness and that emo thing going on. And I'm sorry, but I do not buy that he was an unpopular kind of picked on, chastised kid.
No.
I don't buy that for a second.
Absolutely not.
I thought he was a horrible Peter Parker, but he was a damn good Spider-Man. Tom Holland plays Spider-Man as something completely different. And it's something that I found very refreshing, and it was something that I really kind of latched onto as far as the Spider-Man that I read as a kid. All right, the way that I saw Tom Holland playing this character was much more of a, I don't know my place, I'm trying to fit in with the big boys. I have these powers, but I'm still just a kid. But I'm trying to grow up, but I'm trying to do this. And the way he latches on to Tony Stark is almost like a surrogate father. Yep. I thought was phenomenal. Because you've got Tobey Maguire, who seems to be quiet and reserved and kind of in his head about everything that's always happened to him. You know, I love you because you're what I've gotten. I'm just going to be quiet and reserved, you know, and I've got this. Then you've got Andrew Garfield that seems like he's fucked the world out of everything. You know, not necessarily mean like that, but you can see it in his eyes. That's just the way he played it. He played Spider-Man with that darkness and that edge, and putting on the mask allowed him to do that much more freely. Tom Holland played it in a completely different way, where tragedy happened to him, and that's part of what makes him who he is. It's part of what defines him, but it's not his entire characterization. It may be part of why he is the way he is, but the tragedies in his life does not define him. And to me, that was very refreshing to show that you can still be who you want to be, and you are who you are, but you still have a lot of these other layers and a lot of these other problems that go with it. But I thought that it just made a very relatable, very fun, very cool local superhero from Queens type of scenario, you know? And like I just pointed out, and you even agreed with me on this, the way he latched on to Tony Stark as a surrogate father really brought something special to this role for me. I thought that was a great way to bring in the Avengers and the Marvel Cinematic mythos into this.
Yep, I agree.
The inept way that he fights. The best part of the movie for me, spoilers are coming here, folks. We can't stop them if we want to talk about this movie. Spoilers are coming. Starting right here. The way he starts swinging with the webs, when he kind of gets that cocky little, nobody can tell me what to do, where it kind of flares up a little bit. You know, that little bit of defiance. Like, I'm a superhero. I'm going to show him. I'm going to show him that I can do this. And he kind of turns off the Training Wheels program. As a matter of fact, I believe it's called the Training Wheels program.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize how bad he is doing his web swinging. You know, all of that stuff was on autopilot, like he was in the tutorial version of a video game. And he's doing his web swinging. He, like, skims his butt in a pool. He falls into a little kid's birthday party. You know, he just cannot figure this whole thing out. And I loved the suit, how it's got 248 versions of the webs. It's just like, what? I've got taser webs? What? I loved that. He was so overly excited about his suit. He showed how inept he was to hang with the big boys, but he's constantly got that drive to be better than who he is. And I also thought that Tom Holland perfectly exemplified the nature of Spider-Man, especially in his early years, which is why I like the early years of Spider-Man so much as well, is because it's the story of a teenager, of a kid who's trying to be a hero, who's trying to make the world better, but he keeps failing. He succeeds, but not through any merit of his own. He almost succeeds as almost like a comedy of error. And I thought that it was very awesome to me to see how he keeps failing upwards, but he keeps trying. He's got that drive and he's got that passion because he just wants to help people. He wants to protect people. I thought that Tom Holland was a perfect Spider-Man, at least for the young Spider-Man which they showed. You know, maybe a different older Spider-Man working for the newspaper and whatnot. Maybe that version to you may not include a lot of the things that Tom Holland brought to the role. But for my money, Holland nailed it. Okay, that's the end of my 5-minute rant. You can interject now, Adrian. Adrian's over there. You gonna shut the fuck up so I can interject here?
Taking notes. I feel like there's gonna be a quiz at the end of this.
I'm sorry, dude.
No, I'm just messing with you. One of the things I want to touch on, I wanted to touch on when you first mentioned it, because I think it's really interesting, is you mentioned him kind of glomming onto Tony Stark as this father figure. And I want to be like, he totally does that. And Tony Stark is possibly the worst potential father figure you could glom onto.
Yes.
You know, it becomes this clash of like, this kid is looking up to him and wants to be like him and wants to do is teenager and starts he thinks he's an adult and he should be able to do all this stuff, and Tony himself isn't exactly an adult most of the time, but he has the money and all the power and stuff to kind of get away with being a man child,
right.
So but now he's not necessarily unwillingly, but he's kind of like been chosen as this surrogate father figure, and I don't think he really knows how to handle it. And it pops up at different times in the movie where, it pops up after the boat, the whole boat scene, and then it pops up again towards the end. It's interesting to hear. It's interesting to hear Tony Stark saying things like, "I was wrong." Like, that's not something he normally says. He's usually like, absolutely. "I'm right and fuck all of you, and I don't care what you think."
He's got this pig-headedness about him.
Yeah, so to hear him come out and multiple times say, "I was wrong, I was wrong about this," or "I was wrong about you." I don't know. I know we said spoilers. We already given out spoiler warnings. I don't know why I'm trying to be so quiet about it, but just in case somebody makes it this far, I don't want to give away the entire movie if I don't have to, and I feel like that's a point that could be made without giving it away.
Right.
So
there was one scene that you touched on that I really want to dive into a little bit, and that's the scene right after the boat splits. We saw it and we talked about it in the when we were talking about the trailer for this movie too, when you can see him just trying to hold that boat together, and I knew that wasn't going to be the climax of the movie.
Yeah,
but it was a phenomenal scene in this film. And there was a scene earlier in the movie where Spider-Man's or Iron Man's suit kind of shows up, and you realize that it's just kind of autopiloted, and Tony Stark's actually in a party like halfway across the world, and he's just basically scolding Peter Parker for doing Peter Parker shit.
Yep.
And after that boat is saved, and Spider-Man does everything that he can, but it's ultimately Iron Man that's able to hold it together and get everybody to safety. Despite Spider-Man's best efforts. And Peter Parker just kind of flips out about it, and because Spider-Man or Iron Man starts chastising him, and he's over there screaming, "Well, you know what? If you were here, then you could understand what's going on instead of just sending your suit." And then all of a sudden, the suit opens, and Tony Stark is standing in it, and he's like, "Yeah, I am here because I actually do give a shit." Peter Parker was screaming at him, "If you just listened to me, you would have seen, and we would have been able to deal with these weapons buyers." Which, by the way, the weapons buyers or the weapons sellers, excuse me, that's the Vulture and Electro. Amazing, amazing.
Oh, not Electro, Shocker.
Shocker.
I liked how they brought him in. They didn't do the
Shocker,
old school suit. It was just that power glove. It's just essentially what makes Shocker. So and they actually I passed it off from one guy to another. It's like, "Oh, now you're Shocker." I really liked that part. But yeah.
But the way that Tony Stark even just kind of rebuffs him. Yeah, you know what? I did listen to you. Who do you think called the FBI and got them involved? The sting that you completely screwed up. Who do you think put the wheels in motion for that? Me, because I listened to you. And just to see that dejected Peter Parker be like, I thought I was trying to prove myself to you the entire time. You actually were just kind of looking out for me. That's right before Stark takes away the suit as well. And I love how Tony Stark seemed to almost reluctantly step into that surrogate father role, maybe even without realizing it.
Yep.
You know, I thought that was a really good addition to the story.
I agree. And one of the other things, though, is to, I think it's important to bring up, especially since we have young listeners.
Yes.
In that situation, they were still both wrong.
Because, oh, God, yeah.
Because Tony was listening to him, which is very important, but Tony wasn't communicating with him. So if it doesn't matter if someone is listening to you, if you don't know that you're being heard, if they don't let you know that you're being heard, you might as well, you're going to feel like they're not listening to you at all anyways. So it really becomes this moment where it seems just utterly unfair. It's like, oh, I was listening to you and I did all this stuff and I didn't tell you about it. It's like, well, you know, if we're working together on things, you have to tell me. Or else I'm going to think that because you're not communicating, I can't get in touch with you. The only time you talk to me is when I've done something bad or when you don't like what I've done. You don't say good job. You don't say what we're actually working towards. You don't say that. You don't say anything. You know, and I think that a lot of that kind of relates to Tony Stark not being ready to be that father figure or being reluctant to be that father figure or not understanding what is required in that because he's used to working with Captain America. Captain America's going to go do fucking whatever Captain America wants to do. He's an adult. He doesn't need guidance. And if there's, you know, a disagreement, they're both going to fucking tackle it head on. But when there's that adult-child relationship, even though the child is fucking Spider-Man, you know, it's this hierarchy. And so he doesn't really treat him like an equal. I don't know if Tony treats anyone like an equal, but he definitely doesn't look at this kid with superpowers as anything more than like a pet project that might eventually turn into something, and you know,
or at least outwardly seems to not look at him as any more to that. And I mean, that's what I liked is it seemed like there were layers. Continue on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, and that's fine when you're tinkering around with fucking empty suits of armor, but we're talking about like a person, you know, and I think that
not
was
just a person, a child.
Yeah, yeah, and so one of the things that you mentioned earlier that I think is accurate but also unfair is like, well, Iron Man saved the boat. You're like, well, yeah, Iron Man saved the boat with like fucking 10 other fucking Iron Man suits. Like, it's not Spider-Man's fault that he doesn't have 10 other Spider-Men to come and save the day.
I completely agree. And that's why I said to no fault of Spider-Man.
Right.
To no fault of him whatsoever. He did his best. As a matter of fact, it looked like what he was doing was working.
Yeah, he was close. I mean,
you can't fault him for that. Any of them would have needed backup. Do you think Cappy, with his big shield, would have been able to save that boat? Hell no.
And one of the things that I thought was really, really interesting, and I don't know that it necessarily, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but when he's going through and trying to keep that boat together, and he thinks he's got it, and the suit, because there's an AI in the suit, almost like a Siri or whatever, that's talking to him. She's like, congratulations, you were 98% successful. And 98% wasn't enough to save the boat. Like, he realizes, like...
I liked that.
He was like, I wasn't, I was 98%, but I need to be 100. I needed to be better. So, I don't know that was expressly, like... I don't know that there was any kind of scene that expressly, like, kind of delivered that message, that he was picking up on that. But that it was in there.
That was deep. That was really deep. I probably would have not even brought that up, but that's a very good point.
And one of the things I want to touch, I don't know how much time we have left. We could probably go all fucking night on this.
We really could.
One of the things that I really want to get to is not really about scenes in the movie, although I'm sure we'll talk about it. I thought Michael Keaton fucking nailed it as the villain.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Nailed it.
Oh my God. Michael Keaton, yet another man that walks between two worlds.
I was going to bring that up.
He was originally Batman back in the Tim Burton age, man. He was our first real cinematic Batman, obviously after the television portrayal of Adam West. But he was the first dark, gritty version of Batman. And now he's playing the Vulture.
Let me interject.
And he's doing it so well.
Best line from the first two Batman movies. Do you have one? Because I know what mine is.
Go for it. Make it happen.
It's from Batman Returns. He's fighting some... I can't remember if he's fighting Catwoman or he's fighting some dude. and he takes him and slams him into like the wooden floor or something. He goes, "Eat floor, high fiber." And I was like, awesome.
Nice.
I don't know why, but that line always stuck with me. Fucking loved
Okay.
it. I fucking loved it.
I don't remember that line, but okay.
You're
Fair enough.
gonna have to watch Batman Returns now.
I guess so. But no, I thought he nailed it. I thought that he was a very believable.
Oh yeah.
Again, just like Dracula in Castlevania, very relatable. You can understand because not only did you get a good Spider-Man movie, but you got such an amazing origin story for a villain, and just very, very brief, but you completely get it. You completely understand how a man can turn into what the Vulture is, which is ultimately a thief and weapons dealer. I think who's dealing in what are the aliens again? Chitans? Shitarans, thank you. Dealing in Shitaran technology. He overextended himself and put his house up for collateral to buy all these trucks and all this equipment and hire a bigger crew to clean up after the crisis in New York. And another contractor came in and basically said, "Yeah, all this stuff is now under government control. Get the fuck out of here." He's like, "But I lost everything." "Yeah, it's not our problem. See you later."
Yeah.
And something like that can easily create a villain like the Vulture. And I thought that it was a very short scene, but I thought it was very, very powerful.
Definitely. And one of the things that I liked about this movie was it was a Spider-Man movie, and it also had Tony Stark in it, but it was almost like a Marvel Universe movie where they're like, okay, here's some of the repercussions of things that have happened. The fucking invasion, I think, from the original Avengers is what they're talking about, and all the cleanup and all the leftover alien artifacts and power cores and all that shit. And like, okay, and now here's what's happening. Like, people are collecting them. People who aren't supposed to be collecting them are collecting them, and they're turning them into weapons, and that's how you're getting Vulture, and that's how you're getting the Shocker, and that's how some of these supervillains are going to rise up. We'll probably see the Rhino. I wouldn't be surprised to see some kind of powered mech.
I wouldn't be surprised
suit,
about that at all.
So like, it's congratulations, the Avengers saved the world, and yeah, there's a high price because they fucking destroyed New York, but now there's new villains as a result of it too. You save the world temporarily, but there's always a new threat. And I thought that was really
Donald Glover is the Tinkerer. I thought that was brilliant.
I don't know who the Tinkerer is.
He's one of the less popular Spider-Man villains, but here's the thing that I love the most about Donald Glover's inclusion is not only was it a very funny scene when his suit turns on interrogation mode.
Oh yeah,
and Donald Glover's just over there saying, hey, "You've never done this before, have you? You can tell." "Yeah, it's just you're not scary like at all." Like, and he makes reference to the fact that he doesn't want those types of weapons in his neighborhood. He has a nephew in this neighborhood, a teenage nephew in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. You know who that nephew is, right?
Not off the top of my head.
Miles Morales.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Now I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. So that happened. We've got an awesome Easter egg in there from Miles Morales, which was honestly the Spider-Man that I thought we were going to end up getting in this version. So we got a nice little awesome Easter egg for that in there. But I mean, this Chitaran technology has really come through and played a huge role in a lot of these other movies, beginning with phase 2 with all of these movies. It's translating to the Netflix shows, and now it's actually in the origin stories for things like Spider-Man.
Yep.
I think it's great. Going back to Michael Keaton, though, his performance as the Vulture was also scary. There's one specific interaction that I want to talk about here. I do have 3 things written down, and this is honestly one of them. I think that this is one of the most compelling scenes in cinema this year so far, and that includes every movie that I've seen this year, and that includes Logan, even though I think that that's one of the best movies so far. This scene was one of the most captivating to me. And this scene is everything from when Peter Parker shows up to take his girl that he finally got the courage to ask her out to go to the homecoming dance. Shows up, knocks on the door. Who answers but the Vulture?
Yeah.
Because of course he does. And honestly, I thought that this was so brilliant because the girl that he's kind of into and has a crush on and finally asked to the dance, she's a woman of color.
Yep.
You know, she's a young, beautiful, dark-skinned girl. And who answers the door but her flaming white father, Michael Keaton, a.k.a. the Vulture. Because why wouldn't he be the father?
I loved that twist. I did not see that coming at all.
But the thing is, you should have, because it's Screenplay 101, Adrian.
Yep.
It is Screenplay 101, but it's inclusion by subversion, and that's what I love so much about it, because why in the real world would a white man not fall in love with a black woman and have, a dark-skinned child or mixed-race child? Why would that not happen? Why were our minds not there? It's Screenplay 101, but you're right. I didn't see that coming. Brooke, sitting in the car right next to me, she didn't see it coming. Nobody at the drive-in, because I saw this movie at the drive-in. I heard people shouting out, "Holy shit!" Nobody saw it coming until you did.
Yeah, and you're like, how? How did I not think of that?
Exactly.
But it was fantastic.
Exactly. And lots of people are saying that, and they're praising that moment in this movie because they're calling it inclusion by subversion. You don't think about it until it's right there, and then you realize, why didn't I think about it? Because in the real world, things like this happen. Mixed race couples falling in love, having children. It happens.
Yep.
But it was such a cool twist. But here's the scene that's really getting me, is the entire car ride to the dance.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Parker... I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
I was going to say everything from right when he opens that door, everything from there on to the getting out of the car at the dance was just like...
It was chilling.
It was exactly the word I was going to say. It was chilling. It's just the music, or the lack of music, the use of silence, like it was just perfectly done.
That silence punctuated the
away.
point. Yes, exactly. The fact that his girl, I keep on calling this lady his girl because I cannot remember her name for the life of me. Liz, thank you. Liz is going on in the car about how she met Spider-Man and how Spider-Man saved her when she was down in Washington, D.C. And, oh, Peter, you were down in Washington, D.C. So her father, the Vulture, looks back and he's like, "So you must have been scared when you were inside that elevator, huh?" And Peter knows that he's the Vulture already. No, I actually wasn't in the elevator. I was outside. And then you're slowly seeing the Vulture put the pieces together, and you're starting to see it dawn on him.
Yep.
Just like anybody in the real world would.
Right.
There's a problem.
Familiar. I remember he says that. Do I know you somewhere?
Right. There's a problem that I have with a lot of superhero movies where all of the evidence is beating you over the head, but you still cannot see that this person in front of you is either the villain or the superhero. This movie balked that. As you're watching the Vulture slowly piece together, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Holy shit. I've got this kid that's causing me so much grief in the back of my vehicle. Oh my God. And also just the look on his face. There's so much going on in his brain because you're also seeing the dawn of realization Spider-Man is just a kid.
Yep.
Let alone a kid that little Liz is, going to a dance with. I have the upper hand in this situation, but oh my God, what is this situation? There's so many. I swear to God, there's like an entire conversation going on behind Michael Keaton's eyes.
Oh yeah,
and that acting in that scene alone on Michael Keaton's end was breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking, and one of the most compelling scenes that I've seen in cinema in 2017, maybe even in 2016 as well. I thought it was just absolutely brilliant, specifically for Michael Keaton's acting.
I have nothing more to add to that. I loved that. I mean, that was like the high point of the movie for me. I think that was better than any of the fight scenes. I think that was better than any of the web slinging. I think that was better. It's like here we are, face to face. No one's got their suit on, all right, and we're gonna talk. Right. Like we're gonna talk about what's going on.
Yep.
And and just they're in their own little world. They're in their battle, but Liz is right there. So their world is happening, but they're also in the real world. So it's just like they have to pretend and they have to play and they have to dance around things until she gets out of the car. And I love the way he deftly gets her out of the car. He's like, "Why don't you go on ahead, honey? Like, I got to give him the dad speech." And she's like, "All right, don't let him scare you." And she gets out and she's like going to the real world. And it's like, okay, here's supervillain world happening now. And and he was, you can't disagree with him from like you understand why he is where he is and what he does, and he's doing it to protect his family, but he's not doing the right thing. It's almost minorly like a Breaking Bad kind of situation. He's just like,
I was just about to say almost like a Walter White situation to a degree.
Exactly. I wouldn't say quite to that extreme, but at the same time, stealing
weapons.
He's
stealing, selling, and fabricating Chitaran technology into weapons and putting them out on the streets.
Yeah, which is pretty awful. But then
baking meth. Crystal meth is crystal meth, but I don't know, man. It's two completely different spectrums, but both of them pretty fucking evil.
Yeah, very evil. But at the same time, he's like, he's still just a guy. He's still a dad. He's still a family man. He's like, and you know what? You saved my daughter, so I'm going to give you your life. He said, I forget the exact line. He's like, you saved her life, so I'm going to give your life back. So get out of here and show my daughter a good time, not too good of a time, and don't ever come back around here.
Yep.
And it's just fucking chills. And of course he's holding the gun the entire time and just like, oh my God. Yep. I was floored. I love that fucking scene. I love that entire scene.
Line too. That line, show my daughter a good time, not too good of a time. So he's still throwing in the dad's speech as he's being the cold criminal. And, I truly believe he would have just let Spider-Man be Spider-Man. He wouldn't have even had a problem if he continued to fight crime. Just don't come around here no more.
Yeah, just stay out of my business. Yeah.
Right. You go fight whatever goblin shows up this week. You leave me and mine alone. We're fine. And I truly, truly, from the bottom of my heart, believe that that's what he meant as well. Not saying you're not Spider-Man anymore, just saying you do not come around here. We're off limits now.
Yeah.
And I will let you live. Such a great scene. So much said with so little dialogue. And yes, it was on all parties, but it was specifically on the shoulders of Michael Keaton to deliver that.
Yep.
And he nailed it. He crushed it. So, we are starting to run out of time here a little bit. So honestly, we already mentioned the suit. Honestly, just real quick, what was your opinion on the Spider-Man or the Iron Man-esque version of the Spider-Man suit? Did you like it? Did you hate it?
Which one are we talking about? The one that Iron Man gave to him and then took away?
Yeah, the one that had Jennifer Connelly's voice in it.
It was interesting. It definitely wasn't traditional, though I did like how they brought the webbing as like the gliding webbing under his arms that he could pop it out.
Yes, I loved that.
I love that. It was a little nod. I feel like it's a little too techy. A little too high tech, but
I can respect that.
That's the world we live in. I mean, that's the world we live in with the Avengers and everything now. So I get it. I mean, if Tony Stark is going to give you a suit, it's not just going to be like fucking auto pump Nikes and that's it,
right?
So
here's the thing that I love the most about the suit as a plot device. I loved that suit. So much about Spider-Man in the comic books is thought bubble exposition. He's constantly going on soliloquies. He's constantly narrating the situations that are going on in his life. That is so difficult to do without sounding hokey or like David Lynch. It's so difficult to do in film. Mm-hmm. To have a suit that you can talk to and that talks back, Jarvis style, if you will, I think adds something to the characterization of Spider-Man where it allows him to have those soliloquies. It allows him to verbally get things out. It allows the exposition. It allows us to start to feel for him because we're inside his head, completely unfettered, without making it hokey, without David Lynching it. I think that it adds much more than it takes away. So I think that it was a great inclusion in this movie.
Looking at it from that point of view, I can understand it and agree with it. I just, it wasn't the traditional suit. But,
you're right, it wasn't.
But
absolutely true.
That can be a positive or a negative depending on how you look at it. You want comic book Spider-Man, original Spider-Man, then yeah, that suit's not going to be for you. But if you want a Spider-Man that actually fits into the Marvel universe as it is constructed right now, this is probably the suit. And it would have been interesting to see what the other suit would have been.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah. Yes. The last thing I wanted to bring up, you mentioned Captain America early. This is just a small little throwaway thing. It's a nice little Easter egg that's kind of littered throughout this movie. But you've got to tell me you loved Captain America's inclusion in this movie.
I fucking loved him. It was so
Captain
funny.
America, again, spoilers, such a minor thing, but Captain America is starring in all of these teen educational videos. So, you got detention. That's okay. I'm Captain America, and I'm here to give you some lessons, kid. And I'm just sitting there like, of course he would do this. The fucking Boy Scout. Of course he would do it. And the funny thing is, at a couple of the scenes, they just let the tape keep playing so you can hear some of the other things that he's said.
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell did they contract you for? So, you got an STD. I understand that. I'm Captain America, and I'm going to talk to you about syphilis.
Oh, man, I loved it. I loved the juxtaposition of that, which by itself was funny, but to put that right next to Hannibal Buress was like,
yes.
Of course. Of course. I wish he would have had a little bit bigger role. I wish Donald Glover would have had more of a role. They made such a big hoopla about him, and he was in like 2 scenes,
Well, I don't think they did. I think I did, because I love Donald Glover. But, so what's your rating system for this movie? I'm going to give this 2 web shooters way, way, way up.
Straight up?
Straight up.
So it falls down all over your face, neck, and chest?
In and around my mouth, Adrian Steve.
Gross. Oh, man, I wish he was in it. I'm going to give it 4 out of 4 Dr. Octopus tentacles, even though he wasn't in the movie. There's one thing I do want to touch on that I'm not sure I like, and it's going to be interesting to see how they resolve it. I think they are already at a point where too many people know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. At the end of this movie, I feel like already too many people know. I don't know if you made it through all of the credits, but at the end of the movie and after the credits, there are at least 3 people who know for sure Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And I feel like that's probably too many. So
that's an interesting point. Yeah, that is an interesting point.
So
I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they resolve it.
Yep. Oh, and you know what? I also really liked. There were some little cameos in there. Some of them were more obvious than others. Like I loved the Scorpion, Mac Gargan, being included in there. I think they're setting up for something with him.
Very possible.
And I liked. I think Betty Brant. I think she works at the Daily Bugle with Peter Parker later on.
Does.
She was one of the newscasters on the school news, which I thought was a cool little Easter egg in there.
So much good about this movie, and God knows after this movie is out on Blu-ray, Adrian will never not be able to poop. So. You were hoping I'd forget about that story, weren't you?
No, it's become a part of my lore, I suppose. That will follow me to my grave.
Part of his secret origins.
If we ever blow up, it'll be on my gravestone. Pooping the Spider-Man theme in the sky.
So we realized that we missed a whole bunch of stuff about this movie. We're just kind of up against the clock here for this episode. Let us know what you think. Are there other things that we need to dive into? Do we need to have a second Spider-Man episode? Let us know in the comments. Let us know via email, nerdynomicon@gmail.com. Talk to us on our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/nerdynomicon. You can tweet at us at Nerdynomicon. It's basically Nerdynomicon all over the place for contacting us. If you really like what we're doing, if you want to help us keep the lights on, you can help us out by going to patreon.com/artfulgremlins. Donate $1, $2, $3, whatever you guys can afford. Every little bit helps. And we love you guys so much, and we really appreciate your support financially. If you cannot afford to help us financially, that is 100% fine. You can still help us out by going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the show. Every time you rate and especially review us, it helps us climb higher on the charts so that more people can find us. There's a lot of pop culture shows out there, but we know that we are better than almost any of the other ones. We're at least top 20. We need your help to have the rest of the world find out about that. And I'm pretty sure that takes us through everything, Adrian, doesn't it? You ready to get out of here?
I guess I could talk Spider-Man all freaking night, but
Yeah,
I got
too.
work.
Yeah, me too. So until next time, I've been Robbie.
And I've been Adrian.
Let's close the book.